Hello, and welcome to Vision 2222, the podcast where we talk with experts, researchers, and leaders in materials and manufacturing, finance and industry, energy, science and the humanities, both to know what's going on today and to peer into the future. We ask questions that inspire our guests to imagine what our world will be like 20, 50, or even 200 years into the future. And we have a lot of fun in the process. The hosts of Vision 2222 are Mikhail Gladkeek, PhD mathematician, product development veteran, leader in advanced manufacturing and digital inventory management, and science fiction author. Amanda Chady has a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology, and she mentors early-stage startups in the health sciences, helping entrepreneurs so their dreams can survive and thrive in the real world. And I'm John Marsh, an administrator at a research university where I get a ringside seat to some of the amazing discoveries that will help humanity navigate successfully into the future.
Sabine Berendse is the founder and CEO of Green Phenix, a social enterprise on a mission to collect and reduce plastic waste and pollution in Curacao, which is an island in the Southern Caribbean, about 40 miles north of Venezuela. Sabine, welcome to the Vision 2222 podcast. Before we begin, is there anything you would like to say about yourself or to our listeners?
I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you for the introduction. Indeed, I'm a social entrepreneur based in Curacao. I'm originally Dutch, but I've been in the Caribbean for over 18 years now. And I'm very excited to talk to you guys today.
Great. Well, welcome again. And we're so excited to have you on here. So many people go to the Caribbean for vacation. They have all these beautiful islands to visit, and they view the Caribbean islands as a clean, idyllic paradise with beautiful white sand beaches in which they can sit and enjoy their tropical drinks. But really, under this perfect picture is a big problem that no one really knows about. And that problem is large amounts of plastic waste being generated by the population, in addition to inadequate waste management as well as waste infrastructure. I spent my childhood growing up in the Caribbean, so I know pretty much firsthand the level of plastic pollution I have seen near the rivers, near people's homes. Styrofoam plates, plastic forks, plastic knives, water bottles, it's just everywhere on the street. And many of our listeners probably wouldn't know, but there's a 2019 Forbes article where of the top 30 global plastic polluters per capita, 10 of them are islands in the Caribbean. So it's a very, very serious problem. So tell us a little bit about Curacao. What does the plastic waste problem look like today? And what sort of problems do you encounter in waste management in Curacao?
Well, first of all, I think that the image that you just told, many people see the islands, Caribbean islands, as beautiful places to come for a holiday. And that's absolutely true. We have beautiful beaches. It's very nice to swim here. It's almost always nice weather. But very often for islands that depend highly on tourism, there are some challenges that mainland don't really grasp. First of all, obviously, because of the geographic location of islands, everything that comes to the island needs to be imported, or most of it. We have on Curacao 150,000 people living here, but per annum, 1.2 million come to visit here. We do have Western consumption patterns, especially also the tourists that come here. Well, like every place in the world, most of the things that we consume come in packaging, right? So bottles, wraps. And then when you use a product for the time you need it, usually under a few minutes, then it has to be thrown away. Now, that comes to the first part of the plastic waste problem in Curacao. Every household, we have 74,000 households on the island, has one waste bin. So everything that is produced as waste, and it could be plastic, but it could be many other things as well, food waste, glass bottles, whatever you produce as waste goes into that one bin, which is emptied once a week, and then everything that is collected is just being piled up in a big landfill. Now, small islands have limited land mass as well, so I do believe that a long time ago it was established that landfills are not sustainable solutions, especially not when storms might come and hit the island and then everything ends up in the ocean. So that's basically one. We don't have enough resources to set up really effective sustainable waste management. So we have to think of creative solutions to tap into global recycling ecosystem. But there are two other aspects tied to plastic waste problem. One is a litter issue, which is also a global issue. So when people, for instance, drink a beverage and then sometimes people throw it out of the window of a car. So next to the road, you will see a lot of bottles laying around, which is not a very attractive sight. And then obviously this is not nice for the people that are living here, but also if you're dependent on tourism and your island is looking like a landfill all around, that's not a very positive thing. So I don't think that Curacao is the only island that is struggling with this, but litter definitely is a major issue, especially when there is not a deposit system in place to take back bottles. And then there is another issue, which is extremely heavy, I think, for islands, and that's that the windward sides of islands basically function as sinks for debris. So there's a lot of marine debris piling up on the inlets we have on the North Shore, and that's actively influencing our marine life and resources in a negative way. To summarize, we have three issues. We have the marine debris that has the source very far away but is piling up here. We have the litter, which is a mindset, a behavioral issue of individuals. And then we have a system issue where we are using products for which we do not have a sustainable closed loop system in place.
So thank you for that summary. I want to touch a little bit on the litter issue and what you may be encountering with the mindsets of people, because for me personally, when living abroad and I go back to the islands, it's very frustrating not to see enough garbage, trash cans or bins placed in certain areas that are public, for example, at the rivers or beaches. And so do you think if there were more of these ways to collect litter, do you think it would make a difference?
Only if you combine that with educational efforts, because we actually do have quite a few garbage bins along the beaches. And then sometimes you see a garbage bin which is only half filled, and then you also see a lot of litter items left behind on the beaches just a few meters away from these bins. So I definitely agree with you that having enough bins is essential, but it also needs to be incorporated in the minds of people, and then being aware that their contribution matters as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good point, is trying to find ways of changing the mindset or educating the population that, hey, throw your litter in a place that's available. And for me, that's sometimes the biggest issue I encounter. Actually, people will collect their waste if they're out. They would leave it, put it in a trash bag, but then leave it there. So they don't take it with them. If there's no trash bin, usually you would take it in the car and find a bin to displace it. But many people would just collect it and just leave it at the spot. So I just, this sort of mindset is really frustrating when I see it.
I agree. But then I also think it's very frustrating when there's just one bin, because that would mean that it would go to the landfill, which is not sustainable either.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mikael.
Let's shift the focus to Green Phenix. So the vision of the company is everything is optimally put in service to benefit both current communities as well as the future generations. What are you doing to bring that vision closer to reality? What are the steps? What are the strategies that you have, and how do you connect it? Maybe you have a different vision of circular economy that people are talking about a lot these days.
So Green Phenix exists a little over 5 years, and when we started in literally my backyard, and we had a collaboration with the Ministry of Social Affairs, and we invested in some machines and in the collection stations, and then we wanted some help from workers, and then they said, well, we have a lot of people that are unemployed in Curacao. We can give you 12 names, and then you can have them in a training program, and then after half a year you have to make sure that they have a job somewhere. And that was a very interesting development for us, because we really initially started out to make a difference in plastic, and then we started to work with people that have been unemployed for a longer time, very often with good reason. And it was very interesting to see that they were really eager to work, but they just never had an opportunity before. So thankfully, after half a year, we were able to move to Pavilion Zeelandia, which is a really nice, centrally located facility with different spaces, so that we could actually scale up the recycling. And just after we've moved there, COVID hit. And then because one of the things that we were doing with plastic was 3D print. And at that time, we didn't have enough personal protection equipment on the island. And as somebody that's also involved in 3D printing, you might remember that there were quite a few projects around the world that were printing facial frames. And we also did that because we thought, well, if we cannot help our community by collecting plastic waste, let's focus then on keeping them safe from COVID. And that actually made the other people in the government see, okay, this is something that could be really valuable, and that's how we came into contact with Taste and Bit. We were able to scale the Learn and Work program to 24 people, and as soon as the situation allowed for us, we again came back to plastic waste. And one of the things on which Amanda just touched is you have to have bins, otherwise it's not very easy to recycle. If you only have 2 or 3 points on an island, people have to travel by far, keep their recyclables with them, which is maybe in the way in the house, or so we set out to place recycling stations, so collection bins at several strategically placed locations. And well, that's been steadily growing in the last 5 years. We collect mostly beverage bottles as well as laundry detergent bottles, stuff like that. So we have 3 types of plastic that we are collecting. PET, which is in general the most easily to recycle polymer, and then HDPE and PP. In many countries, especially mainland countries, for PET, there is a deposit system in place. So when you buy something, you pay 10 cents extra, and when you bring it back to the store, you get it back. We don't have that. We have our ecosystem, and then if people bring it to us, they get an incentive, a chance to win a nice prize. Every month is different. And then what we do is we sort it to color and type. We make it into flakes, and then with these flakes, we extrude beams, bricks, and we do 3D printing. 3D printing is still requiring quite a bit of R&D, and the output of products that we can make is quite low considering or in relation to the plastic that we are actually collecting. So just to give you an example, we almost have 2 40-foot containers filled with flakes at the moment. And it's very difficult because we are an island, we have to transport everything through the ocean, right? Ships. And then the prices of transportation as well as materials are extremely volatile. So to make a business model solely based on that is really not possible. So what we're doing is we provide tours to people that want to learn more about plastic recycling. We have these awareness campaigns, we give trainings. The beams are quite successful. We've now been focusing on creating tabletops for different restaurants that are also collecting our plastics, which is really nice. And I think that when you're thinking about, circular economy, you really want to have closed loop systems. However, based on islands with the limitations of the geographic isolation, it's very difficult, especially when you think that for recycling, you need to have a separation into polymer types, right? So that means that if you're just looking at the material from which bottle caps are made, you need to collect so long before you even have a full container, and then it's not worthwhile. So if we can make something locally from the plastic we have there, generate there to prevent it from going into the landfill or into the environment, I think that's really adding value to our society because it creates local employment opportunities. We make really nice products that are used locally. And yeah, Curaçao is a very colorful island, so everybody loves colors. We sort everything to color. And I think it shows people that are working in bigger industries like, oh, when we are able to do it such a small scale, and we are able to provide 24 families steady income, and we're making products that don't have to be imported from somewhere else in the world. I think that's inspiring people, and I'm really proud of what we've done so far. And then I actually think that right now we're zooming out a little bit. We just had a strategy training with the whole team, and we're zooming out a little bit from plastic into sustainability in general, because food security also is a major issue, as well as the other SDGs. So we're venturing out a little bit into a more broad perspective on sustainability, but I do really believe that plastic is a very good visual on, how do we think about materials? What do we have? How can we use it to our benefit? And I think that so far Green Phenix has been able to leverage that quite well. And then we're going to the other islands as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of my clarifying questions. How far is Curaçao from other islands? So can we think about maybe circular economy that would, just because you said, right, it's an island, everything is small, relatively isolated. If we expand that.
Well, maybe also this is interesting from John's perspective as a history major. Curaçao has a colonial history, right? It's part of the Dutch kingdom.
Right.
So that means that the nearby islands of Aruba and Bonaire, as well as St. Martin's Station, Saba, are also territories within the Dutch kingdom, and then the Netherlands in Europe. So when you're looking at laws and legislations that are changing in Europe, we are also kind of related to that. Geographically, Aruba and Bonaire are quite close, but also small. And then Aruba or St. Martin's Station, Saba are a bit further away, more to the north, right? And St. Martin is an interesting island because it has the Dutch part and it has the French part. And the French part actually seemingly has good recycling in place with the connection to France. And then they have other islands like Martinique, which are tapping in and working together. So we are looking at what's possible from a kingdom perspective, because our scale is not enough to be interesting for bigger countries. But the historical trade route would be to the Netherlands. But in distance-wise, and then looking at emissions, that might also at this time and age not be the best choice. So maybe we should look into South America.
And then what you said about COVID and PPE resonates very well because I was involved in that as well. When I led the project at Baker Hughes, and we printed this globally, the face shield components, and we actually supplied, to talk about Caribbean, we supplied a few thousand to Guyana.
Okay, yeah, that's
It's
I
quite
think
interesting.
it's really good for islands, especially, when you're so dependent on import. And then COVID showed that sometimes, that might not be as normal as we have been, getting used to it as a normal thing, but maybe it might stop one day. And then it would be nice if you would be able to produce your own necessities.
Right.
I'll just throw in that based on what Mikhail has been describing to us, one of the key elements of the digital manufacturing revolution is downscaling things. So putting the manufacturing capacity at a low volume level that's still profitable into a smaller place, whether it's a factory that might employ 10,000 people or a country that has 100,000 people. So there may be some logic there that wouldn't have existed before.
No, but there actually is, and that's one of the things obviously we've been working towards. If you have good 3D printers that can handle different materials, because you do have to have the materials that you're printing with in stock, because not all the materials. Our focus has been printing with waste plastic, right? And then we get actually a lot of questions. Is could you maybe print this part because this broke, or and then we just need a different material type. So we have to we will look into would it make sense to have ABS or another type of material in stock when we get these questions, because sometimes when we were using the smaller printers and you have filament rolls, they get bad quite fast. If so you, even that you shouldn't have too much stock for feedstock.
Yeah, you have humidity issues, temperature issues, right? Yeah. This is understandable. But to your point, the circular economy, if you have local production of feedstock and recycling, that could solve this, at least partially, that problem.
That is the idea, and that's why we have different types of plastic. We can make filament out of different types, but our main concern, and so Green Phenix really was founded to make a positive impact for the environment. And then we have so much PET, so beverage bottles are the main items that we find. And we really wanted to do something for that.
What is your vision for the company for the next 5 to 10 years, and who are your biggest supporters?
We are making currently a proposal for a dream factory, which is a physical place where Green Phenix is one of the parts, which will have a creative recycling makerspace, but also other aspects such as a daycare facility for people that are in the Learn and Work program, because we have many ladies, or we had many ladies over the last 5 years that were not able to continue with the program because they didn't have childcare support, which means that they stay in a situation of poverty because they are not able to find a solution for that. And so far, we really want to provide a solution for them as well. But we want to have a restaurant that is serving locally grown food. We want to have a lab where we are working with other startups from, for instance, the Netherlands, like Vaverza. They are having a very interesting product, which is called the MIA, which is a vertical garden climate temperature control, which is producing 10 times as much on the surface with 70 times less water or something like that, which obviously for islands is very interesting because you would not need plastic packaging to bring products to the island because you have it really locally. And it contributes to the food security, and there are so many interesting things going on, and which I think that islands can benefit. We just concluded a project of Race and Bid, which is the European Union funded program specifically for OCTs. And from that, actually, we got the feedback that with the knowledge that we've built over the last years, we could become a center of excellence for sustainability issues, specifically on islands. And I think that really is a good option for the island, because it will also increase the earning capacity of the island and diversify the economy more, which I think is very much needed.
No, thank you, Sabine. It's exciting.
Yes,
Exciting developments. Yeah.
Yeah, that really is. One of the things that a lot of us who've been in business classes and such, we're prey to believing that bigger is always better. And we have to be reminded that there are plenty of examples of attacking problems at a small scale that are very, very effective. And one of the examples I have of that is friends of mine who eventually migrated to Swansea, Wales, of all sort of odd places, but they've had some success in doing things like using wind to create hydrogen to put into municipal vehicles for reducing carbon footprint, and they do all kinds of really interesting things to reduce or capture carbon from local heavy industry. And one of the guys involved in that is named Alvin Orbeck White, and he has a company called Trim Tabs that takes plastic waste and then creates carbon nanotubes. Carbon nanotubes being a building block in industry that can be quite valuable. This is all revolving into the thing that we've been talking about all along, which is what is the future of recycling waste broadly, but also in trying to create a circular economy. But still, we have only 9% of plastics recycled globally. And I'm wondering if that's optimistic. It may be even lower than that, but the current plastic life cycle is far from circular.
Yes.
What can be done to boost innovation so that we can get to a more circular life cycle for plastics? Actually, you've already touched on a lot of that, but tell us more about what you see that could be done.
Well, I really think that policy here is key and should be key. There are measures taken that, at least in Europe, producers are required to put in recycled content into packaging. So that is forcing producers to make use of what's already in the market. But that's not installed in such a way that at this time, if you purely look at it from an economic perspective, is interesting because virgin material is much cheaper. And then you have all these companies that want to make a contribution. So there is a lot of materials that are, invented to be biodegradable or sourced from renewable sources. But one of the issues in recycling, which is a really big issue, is that there are so many different polymer types. And if we're just talking about PET, well, PET, but PET is a large range family of a material that is used, and then each producer puts in its own additives, which makes that if you have that mix and you cannot distinguish it just by looking at it, then the producers that are using recycled plastic will say, well, but you have so many different types of PET, this is worth nothing. So then, you collected this and you made all this effort to visually sort out the best material, just all transparent PET, and then still they say, well, this is worth nothing. So first of all, they are not obliged to use recycled content, and that should be an issue. And then if you're looking at it from an innovative perspective, before something that is innovated now is incorporated in an industrial scale, we will be years away. And plastic is bringing so many benefits to the community. So it's a growing market, will continue to grow, but there should be some uniformity in the design phase, like where mixing materials is not allowed, and also maybe not using additives that are proven to have detrimental effects for the environment and for human health.
Right. When I've read about the circular economy, that's really come out time and time again. It's the design phase, what goes into it, ensuring that that is something that could be recycled effectively. And lacking any incentives or directives in that area, then we
And
remain
sometimes
stuck.
we get bottles, and then in the bottle cap there is a plastic, and there is a metal, and there is a rubber seal, and then the bottle is from PET, and then the label is from two different materials, and there is a glue. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right. It's essentially a composite with some of the bottle caps.
I think what you're saying, so sorry, John, just to add to that train of thought.
Go ahead.
What you're saying about different materials and how they're not compatible. I think eventually technology can solve lots of problems, right? So technically we can figure it out, but behavioral problems, I think, is the forefront here. Unless we solve that, it would be very difficult to build circular economy.
Yeah, and also if you use the design to not have that problem in the first place, you don't have to fix it with technology or behavior. And behavior is difficult to fix, right? Because there's so many people on the planet, and then also there is no infrastructure for it in every place of the world. So
the innovation for the product design from the beginning, if they're designed with materials based on the technology that you have in place for recycling and built into the circular economy, so that what you're saying, that will change behavior just because it will be the only way to go to use them.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too, because with three of us living in Texas, and maybe John, you could add a little bit more on this. But I believe like the "Don't Mess with Texas" slogan was designed to address behavioral changes in regards to littering in Texas. Is that kind of the gist of it?
It was way more successful than people expected it to be too, because it tapped into a particular Texan mindset of independence, and it sort of turned it on itself, because it was saying, instead of saying, hey, you Texans, stop doing that terrible thing, it was saying, we're Texans, we want a clean place, don't we? So don't mess with Texas. So it leveraged that mentality in a positive way, and it actually people actually reduced their littering as a result of it. No, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I said they were actually the slogans on the trash cans, right? And that's how it helped promote the idea.
On highway signs, when you flipped up the "this bridge may ice in cold weather," you flip that up and there's a "Don't Mess with Texas" sign on the back of it, which it doesn't ice very often, at least in this part of Texas. So, you had those signs all over the place. Bumper stickers.
That's a very good example, what we use in environmental psychology, right? Pointing the finger never helps, because people do not like to be, said, oh, you cannot do this. But if you can tap into that sense of pride, and I imagine that, don't mess with Texas, actually, I'm proud of Texas. I would imagine that would work really well, yeah.
And if you add an accent to it, like, don't mess with Texas. So I think that we have exhausted.
Yes. Okay. I think
my question.
So I actually want to shift the conversation a little more globally. So we're going to just step out of the Caribbean a little bit, and I want to hear your ideas on plastic production in general. So I would admit, going into this conversation, when you think about plastic waste, you're like, plastic is bad, plastic is bad. But based on what you're saying, plastics do have benefits. But the problem is with the additives or with the mixed materials that it will make it difficult to discard or the waste of it. So I believe that the majority of plastics are produced in China, Europe, and USA. Those three countries are the three biggest producers in the plastic economy. I want to have your idea of whether or not you think it would be beneficial to have a future with zero plastic production at all. So if we can find another material that can function just as well, but without the waste problem, because plastics are continuing to be produced. There's an upward trajectory of plastic production. So I just want to pick your mind a little bit about what the future of plastic productions would look like for you in 50 years, 100 years, and 200 years. Now, I know these time frames are huge, and there's no right or wrong answers. We just want the imagination to run wild and just to see what your thoughts are with plastic productions.
Okay. I think that it's very interesting the way that plastic is villainized in the last few decades. I think that's not completely fair. I mean, before Green Phenix, I worked at Sea Turtle Conservation Curacao, and that's also why I was confronted with so much plastic debris piling up in beaches. And when you see that daily, and when you see animals suffering from ingestion or entanglement, you begin to have this, negative association with plastic. However, when you then look at the benefits that it's brought communities and the way it helped us to improve healthcare and ease, the convenience of life, and how much it shaped our society, I really don't feel that it's good to say that plastic only is bad. It's really bad that we don't have an adequate way to handle it at the end of the life cycle. So that's something that needs to be addressed. But I do think that the benefits, like the lightweight, the low cost of the material, are so strong that the industry will definitely continue using it. And it's a growing market, and that will be the same. And going over to another material, I don't think is the solution, because it's just the same issue, right? When you start using a new material, the use in its own is shaping the society as we know it. And now, okay, we are encountering these negative aspects of plastic use. So that's what we need to address, not the material in itself, but the effects that are an effect of our use, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, because I myself have that negative view of plastics, and it's all through the media. People look at you weird if you're walking around with a plastic water bottle. You should be using glass or something that you can be reused as well. So, but do you think in the picture of plastic recycling, that sort of villainizing plastic use is the solution for trying to get people to use less of it?
No, absolutely not. I do think that it will help for some people to reduce their use. But like I said, I believe in policy solutions. So if there would be just one type of plastic that can be reused again and again and again, that would be easier, right? And then I'm just, for instance, just talking about plastic packaging, because there's plastic that is used into products that are used for decades. I don't think that that's necessarily a problem. I really think that using materials that does not biodegrade into useful products, but only into microplastics for something that we use for just a few minutes, I think that's the problem. And if we can find a way where at the end of the life cycle, that does not end up in the ocean or the environment or in a landfill, but rather becomes a resource for a new product, that would be the solution. But that requires ecosystem, infrastructure, behavior of people, but also the system that enables that should be supported. Because like I said, when there is recycling going on, in the Netherlands, a lot of small recyclers are currently going bankrupt because there is no industry partners buying their recycled content or their recycled feedstock. So recycle, if it's such a multifaceted problem, because you have to do with what's possible, how are people reacting. But if you don't have the possibility to buy something that is really bad for the environment, that makes a lot of sense for me.
And so what I'm hearing you saying, especially to the point where you have sort of those single-use plastic items that you mentioned, they're just used for a couple minutes, like plastic forks, plastic plates. This seems to be like the biggest issue. Now, if I'm not sure about the idea of recycling, what goes into that, but for recycling companies, is this a big portion of their business, getting those single-use plastic items, as opposed to, say, detergent bottles?
I think most of that ends up being burned. Because it's just a very low quality of plastic. There's absolutely no demand. So these types of projects, I think, should be not allowed anywhere.
Because that's the majority of things that I see personally when I visit Trinidad, is these plastic forks, plates, cups.
I think that one of the issues is that when we talk about plastic, what are we talking about? Because it's such a broad range of different materials with different applications. So you have to not only look at the material specifically, but also at the application. Let's say we would choose, as a global society, let's only use PET plastic, and only these range of additives are allowed, and in such a way that cutlery and plates and beverage bottles would be all in the same bin, recyclable together, then there wouldn't be as big of an issue. And obviously, I'm looking at it from a perspective of a small island. I know in the Netherlands, everything of plastic is put together and then going into a facility where everything is sorted automatically. But there are many places in the world that do not have these facilities. It's also, I think, not realistic that every place in the world gets a recycling company, right? Because that's just not feasible.
Now let's shift the focus a little bit towards the future. Let's build a story together. So think about 100 years, 200 years from now. Can you envision that future? Let's try to imagine that world. What do you see there? How do people live? What kind of problems they have? And if you are able to foresee some of the issues, and if you could make a difference today, what would you start working on right now in order to avoid these types of problems or build a better future world? Very broad question.
It's quite a difficult question. I think if we could look into the future 200 years from now, it would be very interesting to see how is society functioning. Is it using plastic? Is there waste? How is it managed? Because I think it will look completely different from how it's now. I think plastic now is still a material that is looked at as a waste, but the resources that are needed for societies are changing, right? Because we are shifting away from certain energy sources towards others, which require different materials and resources. But I also think that people will put higher value to nature. And I do think that plastic is a very big threat to biodiversity, ecosystem services. So it's my hope that we will find a way to ensure that at least the plastic pollution, how it's reaching the ocean as it's doing today, we will find a solution for that. I don't know if it's realistic, but I do feel that more and more people are, putting time and energy into finding a solution for this. Because when you have children or when you have young people in your life that you care for, what kind of future do we want to give them, right? I think that money is a very interesting and important thing in our economy. But money is not the most important thing that we have. Health, your loved ones, And I do think that the things we're learning about plastic are not necessarily good for our health. So I do think that there will be innovations that will focus on mitigating the negative effects of plastic at the end of their life.
Do you think that we can probably focus more on making those plastics into like building materials, for example, to solve any housing crisis that we currently have with the growing population? What are your thoughts on using?
I think that that's a very, very difficult thing to assess. I think that, we're making building bricks, and I would not recommend to use that in a housing project, because they smell of plastic. And because we use all the detergent bottles that we get, but what kind of additives did the different producers put into that? I don't know. So that means that there is no consistency when it comes to recycled materials stuff. And if you're living in that and living and breathing that daily, I don't want to be like the next asbestos issue where you're impacting people's health, right?
Yeah, because
It has to
off-gassing.
it has to be absolutely safe. And I do think that the challenges I see in recycling will make that quite difficult.
I think the challenge really is we could think about the future and all the trends and bad things that could happen, but then there is a daily challenges that people face. And if that plastic solves that specific daily challenge, maybe this is the way for you to get your food or get your bottled water, then people would choose that first, right? Before they think about, what could happen in 100 years. So, and that's a problem that collectively it's the economy problem. It's also an incentives problem. And how do you look at it in the summary and in the integral problem for all its different things? Like think about climate change, the same thing, right? We understand the trend, but then how do you change your daily behavior of people to impact that trend?
But that's actually so closely related, right? So our consumer behavior and the amount of plastic that is produced, 4% of the gas and oil is used for plastic production, and then 4% for the energy required for the production. So 8% of the global oil and gas is used for plastic. But what you're saying, I think, is absolutely true. We have certain challenges, and plastic is offering a solution. If you look 20 years ago and you look at the news items that were about plastic, it was still about the innovative character and the solutions that it offered. And currently, the narrative changed, right? There's all these challenges with regard to the environment. So now this is becoming one of the issues that we have daily. So that means that most likely we're now coming up with solutions that will solve these problems that have been created by the enormous use of plastic.
Right. And if I'm thinking about the future potential scenarios, you could think about the super positive scenarios when we come up with a new way of, say, generating energy and converting every piece of mass directly into energy equals mc squared, right? Versus the totally negative scenario when we're living in a piles of plastic and everything is polluted and there are no oceans and there's no barren planet just full of plastic waste. The truth is somewhere in between.
So it really underscores what Sabine was saying earlier, which is, and I think everyone on this call has said it, there's no one solution. It has to be an integrated set of solutions that includes policy, but it can't ignore thermodynamics or polymer science, but it also can't ignore economics. It all has to blend, and it's easy to say that. It's devilishly hard to do that. In the US, you try to regulate things and people get all up in arms about you're trying to kill industry. Europe, to a certain extent, seems to have a more balanced approach, as is often the case, but then trying to implement that in an island setting in the Caribbean is difficult. So then with Sabine's company incorporating social aspects and working with government and creating new things, this is a really fascinating microcosm approach to it that, provided that it continues to get support, can really serve as a model.
One of the things that is really important for every company is that they just become self-sufficient, right? So we have to generate sufficient revenue to keep supporting our employers and be able to make payroll. But so far, I think by using different type of revenue streams, as in giving the tours, producing the products, having service contracts to have the collection bins emptied every week. It's just all small bits and pieces, but small bits and pieces make, well, at least a nice core to support all these families. And I think that we have some really good partners in the tourism industry and in the social industry from the Netherlands as well. And islands have many different challenges from mainland. And one of the things, for instance, is that our demography is quite interesting, right? If young people are ambitious and they want to study and learn, they have to leave the island because the education that we have on the island is not the best, I would say. So that means that after 18, we have this whole gap in our demography. And then when they study in the States or in the Netherlands or wherever, they usually stay there for longer and work the first years. And then sometimes, people build a family and they never come back. So we have a very young population and a very old population and nothing in the middle. And the middle is actually paying the taxes to pay for all the public services. So in these type of settings, you have to be a little bit more creative. We get a lot of tourists, and as long as that industry is booming, we have a market that we can tap into. Because online sales, which is hot, I think, in the States and in Europe, is not viable for us because the costs are too high. So you have to approach it in a creative way. But I do think that the technology has enabled us to be more open to learning from abroad, have discussions like this one. I mean, it's amazing that we can do that. And I think that there's a lot of talent on the island that if you guide them the right way, you can actually, untap a lot of potential that is currently not being utilized. And I think Green Phenix has been able to do that quite well in the last 5 years. And that's also why we are still slowly but expanding. And yeah.
So the next thing we do is we try to force people, and to varying degrees of success, to think about time travel itself. Yeah. So the first question actually is we get a lot of different very interesting answers to this question, is do you think time travel is actually possible? And then the next one is, if it is it only forward or only backward or both ways? And then the last part of the question is, if you had to take one trip, or if you had the opportunity to take one trip forward or back, and with the caveat that you can come back, where in time would you go and why? So first, do you think it's possible?
No, I don't think it's possible at this time.
Okay. At this time. Okay.
Yeah. Very.
So that was a hint of it could be possible in the future.
Well, I would say, why not?
Okay. All right. Then
would it be backward or forward? I don't think in our time. If I would have the opportunity, I would go back to my younger self and have a good discussion about life choices and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Is there any place? Is there any time in history, Sabine, that you would like to go back to besides in your lifetime? Is there any particular event in history that you would have loved to see with your own eyes or witness with your own eyes?
Well, I've been studying a lot about the history of Curacao, right? And then when the industry came up here and how that went. And then there is some point in time where there is a revolution on the island, and basically the time mindset is changing. I would love to see that from a distance because it's quite
Yeah,
violent. But
yeah,
yeah, I would, but then it's a period, right? And it's always very difficult to pinpoint a specific time in the period because it's always a
yeah.
build up. But that build up is really, really interesting. And yeah, I think right now there's also very many interesting developments in the world. But I think for, being on Curacao for so long already, I think that when the first refinery came to the island, I think that's very interesting how that really shaped the island. And then when basically the refinery was about to leave, because these are
Uh,
very, very decisive.
And what years are we talking about? Like when did the refinery come?
So I think in 1939 was when it kind of started with having the bigger, and then 1997. So that whole
mm.
period in between, I think, is very interesting because the influence of the church was very well thought of, not necessarily from the religion perspective, but how to influence people. It's very interesting.
You said that religion was a positive influence. We rarely hear that.
No, no, no. I didn't say a positive influence. I said it was
Oh,
used to control the people.
okay.
Not necessarily from purely religious perspective, right?
No,
So probably
exactly.
like
Yeah,
education and yeah,
yeah.
all
Yeah,
well,
that is more
that's
commonly what happens. So Sabine was clarifying the use of the church as a way to control the population, and then has that subsided so that people have more freedom to be and do as they wish?
Yeah, absolutely. The role of the
Yeah.
church has declined over the years.
Okay. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think that's probably a good thing. I say that unfortunately because I'm from a religious background, but I'm well aware of the negative aspects of it as well. So this has been really an awesome conversation. We've covered a lot of ground, and one of the things that really pops out to me is that notion that we were talking about a little bit earlier of the necessity of incorporating a lot of different pieces into a whole that requires a collaboration amongst government and people, private industry, social entrepreneurship. Yours, Sabine, is a social entrepreneurship that I've never really seen before being successful for a relatively long time. I know 5 years may not seem like a long time, but that's enough time to really prove whether something is going to work. And you've been able to make it work by being very flexible. And so going into morphing from turtles to sustainable recycling to then also employability and an organization that will add food and restaurants, that already looks very circular, and it seems like a recipe for, not a recipe, because you're reinventing the whole thing as you go, which is an absolute requirement for entrepreneurs, whether they're profit oriented or socially oriented. What are some of the things that you think of as you sort of dream about the future for you and your organization?
Well, this year we made quite a large transition because, as Amanda said, we met in Oman. I've been spending quite a bit of time there, and that's because I am very lucky that I have an amazing operation manager that is taking care of the day-to-day activities, and that enables me to focus a little bit more on the strategy. And so I just came back to the island, and then we have these team meetings about, these are the ideas that we're developing to also get the input from the team. Because, well, whenever you are scaling, it's very important to have the support of the team members. And we also don't want to scale too much because It's a very interesting time in every enterprise, which has specific challenges for the organization. But I think the most important one then is that the founder, which in this case is me, doesn't necessarily stay too involved with the day-to-day operations, because founders usually are not the best day managers.
It's known of as founder's disease.
Yeah.
And you are explaining how you are moving past founder's disease, really, to continue being viable.
Yeah, but also it's important that you keep the people in your team in their strength, right? So it's very good that you acknowledge what's your own strength and also your weaknesses, and then looking for these new business opportunities with other startups that are active and successful in different contexts, and then seeing how I can bring that into the island context, and also how we can share the knowledge that we've acquired over the years in other contexts. Like, for instance, we're busy making a case for making an Arabic version of our e-learning for in Oman. Because if I'm spending time there, let's add to the community there. And there's these common things, like a sea turtle is a big thing in Curacao, but it's also a major thing in Oman. And education is very important. And there is also a wish to do something for nature and address plastic pollution. So if we have that, all the knowledge and the content available, let's make it for the context of for instance, Oman. It doesn't necessarily have to be there, but because I'm there, it's easy to do it there. And I think then that's just growing and building on what you have and what your strengths are, and also what makes you enthusiastic, right? Because I think that entrepreneurship is quite hard, and you come across a lot of challenges, and sometimes I think it's very difficult to stay positive. Yeah, you have to be very flexible. But then when you can work on something that gives you, that passion, that's the only way to maintain it. But the question every day is, how can we expand our impact and how can we do better?
Right. Well, it sounds like you are busy building a network too, where you can reach out to other locations, other islands and so forth, and incorporate where it's possible to get integrated with those. And then you have a guy like Mikhail who's going to look into possibly this large company, but with an ability to look at small scales. There's some really exciting pathways that you have in front of you. If people wanted to get in touch with you and learn more, I mean, I know we have your website, and it's a really nice website. How else would people get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is the best way. So
And
at LinkedIn is easy.
Well, anything else from Mikhail and Amanda?
No, just want to say thank you for your time and insightful conversation. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I hope it was interesting for you guys as well.
Yes, it was really nice. Thank you, Sabine. It was a remarkable conversation, and it's something close to my heart as well, with the waste in the Caribbean. So I was very happy to have this discussion.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Vision 2222. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Our YouTube channel is called Vision 2222 Podcast, all one word. We're also on Podbean at vision2222podcast.podbean.com. Again, Vision 2222 Podcast is all one word. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vision 2222. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please subscribe, like, and share with your friends. Please also comment, and we'll do our best to respond.